Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes, and today we are finally recapping Netflix's Dark. We're starting with episode 1, Secrets, and I am here with From One of My Stories, Lindsey Dunn. Hello, Lindsey.
It feels weird not to say ahoy, but
oh, I forgot to say ahoy there. Yes, you're right. I'm thinking like new place anyway.
Is it still appropriate to say ahoy? I don't know.
It's a Dark Ways production thing, so absolutely we're going to say ahoy there, Lindsey. How is your ship going tonight?
My ship is brooding and moody, as is appropriate for this show.
Perfect. Yeah, same. We're in the right headspace for this heavy show.
If we're not in that space, that's a space we need to be in. So it's, I'm not saying I am actually feeling brooding and moody today, but I'm trying to get there right now. I'm transitioning into my brooding and moody tone. That's right.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's easy to do with this show. This show is I love the palette of this show. I love everything about it. I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the recap is, why we chose to do Dark. And I'm going to throw it to you, Lindsey. You've already done written recaps of Dark. So now you're actually doing some verbalization of those. So what led you to actually want to do the recaps of Dark?
Well, I've always wanted to do a Dark podcast when the show started, and I had in my head, one day I'll be a podcaster. Yes, I can do it one day. But at the time, I didn't have the knowledge or the skills to do any podcasting. So, now we've come a little bit further in my career, and I've meddled with podcasting and YouTubing, and I finally got settled and met you, which has been a wonderful blessing. And because I found the perfect person, my perfect match, my perfect dark match. Yay. To be able to do this with me. And we both have a similar philosophy, I feel like, when it comes to podcasting and what we want to do here. So it seems like, hey, we have the opportunity. I would probably, if it was, let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and somebody said, will you do a Dark podcast with me? I'd still probably say yes, because I feel like I would never run out of things to talk about with this show. And I don't feel like I went through it with anyone. I did it by myself.
Gotcha.
And through the years, I've talked to people who have those good conversation skills, but they had watched it. We watched it at different times. So we would just share little tidbits on Twitter or Facebook about how much we liked the show, but we didn't really discuss it. So It's just I'm just seizing the day here, basically.
I mean, same here too. I loved Dark when I first saw it. I binged it maybe like a year ago. I watched it all pretty quickly. And I just watched it that one time and loved it. And I've always wanted to kind of go back and rewatch it. And my usual thing when I watch a show that I love a lot and that I really want to get into it is I'll, find a recap podcast to listen to. And I'll watch one episode and then listen to the recap podcast, then watch episode 2, etc. So I've been planning to do that with Dark here. And it just never happened. And then when 1899 came around and discussions with you and reading your Dark recaps, it just seemed like it was the podcast I'm going to listen to is mine. I'm going to do it. So I'm really happy to instead of finding a podcast to listen to, be able to do it and, give it to other people to listen to. Because, I love podcasting. I'm very enthusiastic about the shows that I like. And you obviously have already done these recaps, like written wise. So, I mean, it's the perfect match, the perfect darkness, like you said, Lindsey. And I wanted to say something that you said in a previous podcast, which is when you rewatch Dark, which I think a lot of people will be doing, maybe we'll catch some people watching it the first time around. But when you rewatch Dark and you're like in a different place in your life, you look at things differently. It's already happened because I just rewatched Dark this past week. I watched it twice and I have much different feelings about it now because of personal things that are happening in my life that directly tie in with this episode. So you're right. This show is great to rewatch. just because you'll see it from a different perspective each time you do it.
It's also, I feel, motivation for me to finish the recaps because I didn't finish. I'm almost done with season 2. I have 2 episodes left, but I never did season 3. And the people that love my written recaps keep asking me, when are you going to finish season 3? So this is my motivation and my call to do it, because we're going to get to the point where we'll run out. So it's time. The time is now. The bell has tolled.
It has. And has the bell tolled for us to begin the recap, Lindsay? Do you think we should go ahead and do this?
I think we should, or we'll be here for a really long time.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, as we said, Lindsay has already written these recaps. You can find these at oneofmystories.com, and I'm going to provide a link to this episode 1 recap. But, yeah, Lindsay's going to do some reading from those recaps to fill us in on what is happening scene by scene, and then we'll discuss them. So first scene is you, Lindsay.
All right. So we start the episode with a quote from Albert Einstein. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. This is just written on the screen. We don't hear it said. Then immediately after, a voice narrates, "We trust that time is linear, that it proceeds eternally, uniformly into infinity. But the distinction between past, present, and future is nothing but an illusion. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow are not consecutive. They are connected in a never-ending circle. Everything is connected." And as that voiceover finishes, while he's been talking, we've been seeing photos of individuals. We don't know who these people are.
Right.
But it pulls back and we see a giant wall that is covered with photos, and all of the photos are connected with strings. And there's just this intricate web of photo portraits that fill the screen.
Typical serial killer stuff.
It really does look like, what do they call it, a murder board? Or, I think that might be actually what they call it.
Or a conspiracy board or something along those lines. I mean, I do like how they show some characters, they'll show like, past, present, future, but then some characters we see only one picture of. So it's kind of like, come on, show us some more than that.
Yes. So what are your thoughts when you see that, when you start this? How do you feel about this opening? How does it make you feel?
It makes me feel very welcoming, because I know that this show is speaking to me. It's somebody who's speaking to me. So this is my language. I like this. It's not that I necessarily believe these words, because I believe past, present, and future are kind of linear. At least in my experience, they are. But I love to, think about other perspectives and think about, what other people, think about that. So I love it. It's all for me.
I want to speak to all audiences when we do this. And so we talked about the fact that we might have new people that are just watching the show for the first time, or we might have veterans that are watching it many times. But putting my place back in first-time viewer, this intro didn't do jack for me.
Oh, yeah?
It's one of those things where you hear a guy intoning things that sound important and philosophical, but what does it mean to you personally right then? When I go back and watch it now, I really like it. But I think when I first watched this show, I was like, what are you talking about? Show me something. So then I like, when it actually starts and we meet the people, then it becomes more interesting to me. But there's several places in this show that many times where people will intone these long speeches, and it sounds like they're kind of talking from a textbook or something, or saying an important philosophical thing. And it can be interesting, but it doesn't really do much to move the plot forward. So you can, those are sometimes times, it's like reading Moby Dick, and you get to the part where they read about whaling practices. What are you
I'm wearing a Moby Dick shirt.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, go ahead.
I'm using the worst like connection ever, but for like reading Moby Dick, that's like one of those things that I can just maybe you feel tempted to just move past that scene, the long like thing of like being in the whaling church. You're like, tell me something that I can picture. You know, what are you talking about? But next, so that was my mentality as a first time viewer.
I guess, yeah, we think differently about that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. If you start talking about time and different perspectives and portals in time and the brain, then I'm just all over it. So it just spoke to me. And this next scene also, I have a lot to say about this next scene. So
okay,
let's think we can
move on. Yeah. So it's now June 21st, 2019. A man seals an envelope, stands on a stool, loops a noose around his neck, and hangs himself. A close-up of the envelope that the man closed appears, which says, "Do not open before November 4th, 10:13 p.m." Next to the envelope is a family photo with the man who just ended his life, 2 women, and a teenage with red hair. Everyone is smiling but the adult man.
Yeah.
And soon the script or the narrator will reveal that the man, well, it actually is the script. Later on, we learn that the man is named Michael Conwald, and the other people in the photo are Hannah Conwald, who is his wife, Jonas Conwald, who is his son, and Inez Conwald, who is Michael's guardian.
I thought it was interesting, too, that I absolutely noticed how he was the only person not smiling in that picture. Pretty telling with the fact that he's, this is a heavy way to start a show. Like you said, the if the past, present, future, all that heady talk doesn't drive you away, then surely the first scene being someone committing suicide will drive you away. It's a brave choice. I'm surprised that they started the show like this, because it's really brave to start a show this way. It's almost like a barrier of entry, or like almost gatekeeping in a way. Like, if you can't handle this scene, then you can't handle our show.
That's so true. Today, people talk about wanting a trigger warning. There's no trigger warning here. It's right there, and I like your words being like, if you can't, your gateway entry, if you can't handle this scene, this show is not for you. Because it does put you right into, you don't know this man, but you just saw him stand on the stool and kill himself. And you can see, if you're the type that takes in things, you can see that the room is an artist studio. And his shirt has paint on it. So he's a painter. People love art. We think about the tortured artist, but it does make you wonder right away, what is this man's story and why is he doing this?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This reminded me a lot of like black metal or death metal. This show is definitely like for people who are into that kind of thing, because when people hear that type of music, especially the vocals, there could be very like screechy or growling or guttural, and that drives a lot of people away immediately. And that's almost by design, where like if you can't handle these type of vocals, then this music is not for you. And then you come to realize, well, those vocals are there as representations of like evoking emotions. And these people who are doing this aren't just like kids in the room screaming. They're actually trying to, present something and evoke an emotion. And it's a brave way to start a show, evoking these type of emotions. Yeah, that was my comparison.
Yeah, and I will say, which I've kind of shared with you off mic before, Steve, but at the time this show came out, it was a couple years after my brother-in-law did hang himself, and so this scene definitely gripped me and spoke to me in a very visceral way right away, but it also, I was in that state. I wasn't in a good place when the show came on. I mean, and before bed, I would watch an episode and drink a lot of wine. So it was it healthy? No, but this was really the perfect show for me to watch and experience these kinds of difficult topics. And I was looking for that. I was looking for something that I could relate to and something that would feel safe or like welcoming for me. Like, this is a place for you. This is a place you can be and be with people that understand what you're going through, in a sense. Mm-hmm. And so this is what this show can do for you. And we talked about being different places in your life. This is now several years after that fact. And that scene doesn't impact me in the same way, but it is immediately like gripping, like you can almost put yourself in the place. People talk about the power of nostalgia, and this is almost the opposite of nostalgia. You can revisit your trauma with this show, and some people may not like that, but some people do find that comforting.
Yep. I guess the only thing I'll add is that because you're kind of disconnected from it in a way, it's not your personal life. You're watching, make-believe life, but it's hitting the same emotions. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good point. So before we go into the opening music, there is a person that wakes up with a start and like a gasp of air. Mm-hmm. And if you're the type that notices things, you'll notice that this is the teenage boy from the picture. It's almost like he woke up from a nightmare, and he swallows a few pills to calm himself down, or whatever those pills are, uppers, downers, who knows.
We'll find out in a few minutes.
Yeah, but he wakes up like as if he was having a nightmare, and that is our introduction to this show. And we go into the opening credits. So
it is heavy. And those opening credits, that's a great song right there. It's a song called Goodbye. And I think you wanted to go into talk about a little bit of that song, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'll read what I put in the recap, and then we can discuss it.
Yeah, but go for it.
The theme song for the show is Goodbye by the band Apparat. They're a German electronic musical group, and Goodbye is track 4 from their album The Devil's Walk, and it's been used on several soundtracks previously. I love this song, and I like how it goes with those title credits, the pictures. The images are replicated, broken, and fractured, and it's difficult to discern what some of the images are. Now, as we go along in the show, we will recognize scenes in those title credits. But the overall effect kind of mesmerizes you and puts you in a trance, like looking at a kaleidoscope. When you stop and look at one of those, you're just mesmerized by those pictures. And in many shows, theme music is a placeholder and a place to go get a snack. But I feel like the dark theme and the title credits are ones you never skip. And the comparison I made is thinking about Angelo Badalamente's Twin Peaks theme song. It's kind of this door into another world and helps the viewer to transition into the show and puts us into the reality, which is the nightmare that is Wyndon in this case. So what I wanted to talk about, apart from, you can comment on any of that, but what I wanted to ask you is how this song makes you feel.
Oh, absolutely. Almost like sorrowful, like the chord choices. It's just 4 chords that are just like ascending and then descending, but they pick those right chords. I really thought I thought this was a Ben Frost song until, I looked into it a little bit more. It's music is a hard thing for me to like actually verbalize and describe. I don't know why that is, but I don't know. For me, it's the vocals. It's the vocals that really make the song. And those images, I could watch them all day long. I mean, by the time that this opening credit started, like I'm talking about like the first time I saw this show, and I'm hearing this Albert Einstein talk, and I'm seeing this heavy scene of this guy hanging himself. And then I hear this song, and I see these credits, and it's like kaleidoscope visuals, and the visuals are crazy, mesmerizing. I was all in. I mean, even before I got 10 minutes into Dark, I was already like proclaiming it like my show. I mean, it sets the tone.
And the lyrics are so good, and they match the show so well. So I feel like this song just puts us in that mood. We're ready for the nightmare.
I'm hearing those lyrics for the first time right now. I didn't know what those lyrics were. When I hear songs, I almost never hear lyrics. I just like hear like melodies and stuff. So you're telling me this for the first time, so I need to pay more attention.
Well, that's interesting, because I remember when you were recapping 1899, you'd often get on and recite some of the lyrics from the songs. So I thought you were into those lyrics, Steve. Well,
episode 2, I'm going to do exactly that. We got 36 episodes. I can do this, baby. So next time around, I'm going to do it.
Oh, boy. Keep going?
Yeah.
All right, so once the title credits end, it's now November 4th, 2019. So before we were June, so it's now been 5 months.
The day of the letter finally is here, right?
Right, the day the letter is to be opened. And
yay!
Jonas, yay! Yeah, letter day. It's like miracle. What is it? Miracle on 34th. It's letter day. So Jonas wakes up and goes downstairs, and there's no power in the house, and the milk has gone bad. And he calls for his mom, and no response from mom. And mom is now in bed with one Ulrich Nielsen. And yeah, so they are shagging around, and Ulrich wants to know if Hannah will be at the meeting tonight, and Hannah demurs that perhaps not, because Katerina will be there. He gets dressed and sneaks out the window. But before he does that, Hannah tells Ulrich that she loves him, and Ulrich only replies, "You're beautiful."
That's nice, isn't it?
It feels like a slap in the face.
It is a definite slap in the face.
And Hannah glances at the aforementioned Conwell family photo that was in the first scene. Only one person has been ripped out of the picture, and the person missing is Inez, who is Michael's mother. So
that's rude.
I mean, yeah.
You're ripping somebody out of a picture like that? I don't know. Anytime you see that, you know something bad's gone down.
It's like, that makes me think of online dating, when sometimes people will post a picture of themselves. Like the only pictures they ever had was them with their ex-girlfriend or their ex-boyfriend. So they will post the picture, but it's very obviously has somebody else, like a head, an arm or whatever, but that person is no longer in the photo. So ripped out of their life.
This had like the jagged rip too, so like she ripped it. She didn't like take some scissors and think about it. She was in the midst of some I don't know, some other situation with her. I mean, you could tell there's some animosity there. Hey, before we go to the next scene though, I'm going to take a quick break if that's okay. We're at the half-hour mark, Lindsay. So I'm going to take a break, and we're going to hear a word from the marshland monster, James McCullum. We'll be right back.
Hey y'all, James here before the show starts to tell you about 2023's MLM Pod Patreon Pledge Drive, taking place live at twitch.tv/Mostly Speakin' Sentai on April 15th, starting at 9 a.m. What is it, you wonder? Well, in an attempt to get you to subscribe to patreon.com/MLM Pod, where you can listen to our premium content like This Existed, Engaged with Nicolas Cage, Mostly Speaking Sentai After Dark, and so much more, I'll be streaming live until we get to 40 patrons or I pass out. Starting now, for every 10 new patrons we get, I'll be doing the extremely spicy Pocky One Chip Challenge. That goes for $1 patrons, $5 patrons, and $10 patrons, so go subscribe now. The live stream will include video games, watch-alongs of Lost Luchadores and Stick It in Detroit, a live recording of Formulaic with R2 Shelby 2, me working out, showing as much skin as Twitch's terms of service will allow, call-ins, music making, and more. So again, that's Saturday, April 15th, starting at 9 a.m. to ? Twitch.tv/Mostly Speaking Sentai. Go subscribe now to patreon.com/MLM pod to make sure the party starts off hectic with me eating a lot of spicy chips. Now, enjoy some good Marshland Media podcasting. Toodaloos!
We are back with our recap of Dark. And where were we at, Lindsay? We just had, we're at the part where Jonas departs the house wearing his yellow rain slicker.
Right, so Jonas departs from the house wearing his bright yellow rain jacket, an iconic image that will repeat itself in the show many times.
Love it.
And the camera pans to capture the site of a large nuclear power plant. And a sign on the post reveals that a boy has gone missing named Eric Obendorf. Ulrich jogs home and passes a directional sign showing that 0.6 miles away lies the Winding Caves. I actually think the sign said something else in meters, but the folks at Netflix nicely translated that for us into miles. And we see the caves and zoom into the darkness within. There's a whooshing sound in the air, which is super creepy. And next to the caves is a discarded yellow easy chair.
Automatically,
I love that chair.
Yeah. It made me think about The Wire. Did you ever watch The Wire on HBO?
No.
Yeah, there was always not always, but there were scenes where there was discarded couches and chairs, just in weird places, and people just be hanging out on the couch, just some old couch that hangs out in the rain. And yeah, I love this site. The image wouldn't be the same without that yellow chair next to it.
That's true.
Speaking of you said that Netflix was nice enough to translate for you. I watched the show twice this past week, once in German, once in English. How are you watching the show?
I watch it in German only. One time I accidentally started watching it in English, and I was shocked and horrified. I couldn't get over the dubbing. It was so bad.
It's hard for me too. So yeah, I prefer to watch it in German. I was just curious what you thought. Heather wants to watch it in English, so I'm going to be watching it in both German and English every week. So I'll be watching it in German by myself, taking my notes, and then when me and Heather watch it, we'll watch it in English, and I won't take notes. I'll just watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think one thing that I remember from the scene, too, that's interesting is when Jonas is doing this, when he rides his bike and he stops at a traffic light.
Right.
And again, these are things we know that Bo and Yantya are huge fans of Twin Peaks. These are just things I love because they remind me of Twin Peaks, too, because there's the image of the stoplight in that show, as well as there are certain things in the town that you get this sound of the whooshing wind. And
oh, yeah.
Nice little, I'm not doing ASMR in your microphone, folks. I'm just trying to make my best whoosh. But it just has this town. You get a sense that this town is not right. And even the image of Ulrich jogging with his hoodie on, it just makes you feel not just gloomy, but things are just not quite right here in Winden.
Yeah, I would say gloomy is a good word for it. And I guess this would be a good place to say, too, that this town of Winden does not actually exist. There is a Winden, Germany, but it's not this Winden, Germany. The real wind in Germany does not have a power plant there. This show is actually filmed in Berlin. So if you go to Wind in Germany, you're not going to see any of these things. And they did that on purpose because they didn't want, the small town of Winden to be inundated with, sightseers and stuff. So they purposely made it a fictional town with a fictional power plant.
I'm going to completely forget that you said any of that because I want to believe there's a Winden.
Well, there is. You can tag your posts Winden. It's fine. But you're not going to see a forest road, and you're not going to see that traffic light there, and etc.
The Winden Hotel? No? Okay.
No Winden Hotel. Well, there probably is a Winden Hotel, but there's not going to be Regina at the desk. I'm sorry. Oh, but yeah, you can go on if you're ready for the next scene.
So Jonas walks with a man that turns out to be his therapist, one Peter Doppler. Now, I actually thought that maybe that's not correct because Peter is saying, he says that he was reading Jonas's therapy session notes. So when I saw that, I was like, well, actually, maybe is he his caseworker or social worker who assigned him to a therapist, but is handling. But anyway, Peter is involved with Jonas's emotional healing in some way.
Yeah.
They seem comfortable with each other, and Jonas reveals that he still sees his father sometimes. And Peter wants to know if it's a dream or he thinks it's a dream. And Jonas wonders if his father is trying to tell him something. And Peter asks, like, what? And Jonas just snaps and starts screaming. And I relate to that. I thought this seemed like a really dumb question. After someone dies, especially after suicide, the question you always want to know is why? And even when we were talking, Steve, when we started that, I mentioned that when Michael hangs himself, you automatically are like, why is he doing this? What's wrong?
Right.
Why is his life this bad that it would get to that? And Jonas is in extreme pain because his doesn't understand why this happened, which lets us know that he doesn't know about this note that was left. Because he mentioned that his father left no note. So we're like, what happened to the envelope we saw at the beginning?
Yeah. The first time I saw this scene, I thought to myself, wow, Jonas is really still affected by this. He's really snapping at this guy. When I rewatched this, I was like, this guy, being Peter, is a really crappy therapist. That's a really stupid question to ask. So I can totally understand why Jonas snapped at him the way he did, because that was a really dumb, unprofessional question that he should have known the answer to. It's not a very good, conversation starter of a question, I guess. Mm-hmm. Just somebody who's in that much pain.
What would have been a better question? I think that's it's a valid question because I think people do struggle with this. When people go through stuff, they're like, what do you say? And I don't know what to say. So sometimes people say nothing, or they say really dumb things that are hurtful, like this. Coming from a therapist.
Well, you're asking me now what I say. Peter wants to know if it's a dream. Jonas wonders if his father is trying to tell him something. Instead of Peter saying, like what, Peter could say, and that's interesting. A lot of times when we feel like somebody is trying to tell us something, then maybe it's just ourselves trying to, comprehend what's going on. Or
yeah, I'm sorry, that might have been a lag, but I guess I was trying to think what I would ask, what would have wanted to ask. But, yeah, I don't know, but hopefully Peter has gotten some better training than saying like what, or I can understand, or many people, maybe if he says something like, many people feel that their loved ones are trying to communicate with them in different ways. So this is normal, to be sort of assuring or let him know that you are welcome to open up with me as much as you want.
Right.
And I'm here, and I'm not going to treat you like that this is weird that you're seeing your father still.
Yeah, these are hard questions, Jonas. These are very hard questions. This is a very hard time. I'm here for you, buddy.
I like that. Good job, Steve. There's always time for a new career.
Even at 50.
Okay, so the note.
Yeah.
That question is answered pretty quickly where that note is, because Enos Conwald is sitting at a table, and in front of her is a wooden box with a tree on it. Inside the box is a letter left by Michael. We also see that Enos has her own version of the family photo on her wall.
Yep.
And this time I noticed, Steve, for the first time, because you notice new things all the time.
Yeah.
In her photo, no one is smiling.
Really?
She has a completely different version of the photo.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah. I got to go back and rewatch
You're
a fourth
have to go back
time.
and look at that. Yes.
That is awesome.
It's just a little. They show her looking at the. Well, because in the picture in the beginning, we have the 3 people smiling and the 1 person not smiling, and in this picture, no one is smiling.
Wow.
So I did not know how to take that at all. I was like, is this a different, sometimes people take multiple pictures, right?
Sure.
Or is this sometimes when people look at photos, they see what they want to see.
Yeah.
Is Enos looking at this photo and seeing only unhappiness? Like even if the picture might have smiles, and then Jonas might be, and Michael might have looked at the photo and going, remember those happy times when we were a happy family? They see what they want to see.
Right.
So I was thinking about the perception you can bring to things. But yeah, it was trippy seeing that photo appear. I actually stopped and went, what?
Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see Jonas look at that picture now and see what he gets from it.
Yeah, what does he see? Everybody's got their tongue stuck out or something.
That is maddening that she has to sit there and wait for that exact minute. Heather was saying, she's like, there's no way. She's like, if you did something like that and left me that kind of note, I would open it immediately. There's no way I would wait any specific date, any specific time. So Inez really has some wherewithal to to keep that.
Like Pandora's box, don't open the box. If you're not going to open it now, why would you wait? But I feel like my take on this was she wanted to respect his wishes. She obviously cares really deeply for him. She's ready to open that letter because she keeps looking at it and looking at the clock.
Yep.
So we know she wants to open it, but at the same time, she decides to follow the instructions for whatever reason. And there is a voice on the radio talking sort of in the background,
right.
Not really it's not seen as important, but they're talking about the wind and power plant, which was constructed in 1960, is going to be taken off the grid in 2020. And this is one of the power plants that has had the longest record staying failure free.
Hooray!
Yeah. But they want us to know that this wind and power plant is closing, and it has a squeaky clean record.
Alrighty. Yep. I paid close attention to that as well. Like anything in the background they're talking about is fair game for all of our ears to listen to.
Yep. Pay attention to everything.
Yep.
So move on?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So Ulrich, the wayward Ulrich, has arrived home, and we meet his wife, Katerina, and their 3 children, Magnus, Marta, and Mikkel. Magnus and Marta are both teens, and Magnus is very overexcited about where his black hoodie is. Martha is on a hunger strike and won't eat breakfast. And Mikkel is the youngest, and he is wearing a skeleton costume that Katerina wants him to take off because she doesn't feel like it's appropriate for school. But Mikkel insists it's part of his magician's costume, and it's his signature look. So Ulrich comes in and says there was a long line at that bakery. So he needed to pick up those croissants that everybody obviously wants so badly right then. And Ulrich is he enjoys Mikkel's aspirations and his show. And so even though Katerina has said you need to get up right now and change that outfit. Ulrich is like, okay, show me a magic trick.
Yeah.
And the trick is that Mikkel makes a little game token move from one cup to another. Classic magician's trick.
Yep.
And Ulrich asks him how he did it. Mikkel replies, the question isn't how, but when.
Mikkel.
So what did you think about these family dynamics?
I love this family dynamic. I like the chaos in their house. Mikkel is number one. He's like my favorite. If I was going to tell you who my favorite was, it's definitely Mikkel. He's punk rock. He's great. I love his magic. I love his hoodie. Keep it on, buddy. Wear whatever you want to school. The M's were interesting, how they have the Magnus, Marta, and Mikkel, because I know a family named the Moseses. I think the mother listens to this podcast, and we have Michelle and Mark and Miranda and Matthew and Michael, and that is their family. So that's immediately who I thought about when I saw this, is that they have the little M thing going on with their kids. Ulrich obviously sucks. Bald-faced lying to his wife. Magnus borderline sucks also. I don't like bullies. I have a zero tolerance for bullies, so I don't like seeing anybody slapping their little brother around. And mom and dad aren't saying anything about that. Hands off your brother, kid, At least Marta should have spoke up for him there. But despite the fact that, we already know that dad sucks. If we didn't know that dad sucked, then I would probably if we hadn't already seen that scene with him cheating, then I would have liked him a lot because, he kind of comes in, the mom kind of runs like a tight ship, or she wants to anyway, but the family is a lot more non-traditional. So they're kind of more loose, and the dad is kind of loose along with them and kind of isn't tight with the rules. And you can tell he's attentive to his little guy. He gives him his full attention, and you can tell that they share something at the very least. And I like Marta sticking up for hunger strikes, of course. I mean, that always makes me think about old friend of mine, Meg, and that's kind of how she was when we were in high school, and so I'm drawn to that as well. So I get really good vibes from this household, despite what I know about dad.
Well, okay. I hear you. Ulrich does suck, but at the same time, when he comes in and is more relaxed, it makes me feel comfortable. Like, he makes me feel super comfortable, and you can tell that's why their combination of things probably helps their house. Katerina is a little more anxious and wound up, and Ulrich is very relaxed and calm. And I love the attention he gives Mikkel. And but I also do realize that he was going against his wife's wishes, which is never good. Because sometimes my parents had that dynamic where one of them says one thing and one of them says the other, and you find out very quickly which one holds the power because that person gets their way.
Right.
So in this case, it's obviously Ulrich that gets his way. But I was like, he loves his kid. I liked that he was an attentive father to his kid and was like, wear whatever you want. Now, Magnus was hitting his brother in the back of the head. That's not cool. But I felt like this was a typical family dynamic that you see, that picking on the younger kid, the older kid is kind of is very much left to his devices, and you have one that's always the social advocate, she's just like world peace and all that. And but yeah, I was like, I need my black hoodie for the first day of school. I absolutely do. Yeah. So where is it?
Yeah.
It was very, I don't know, just kind of comforting and familiar, I feel. Even though this is a German family, you would think we don't have anything in common, but it was like, I feel like I recognize every single one of these people.
Absolutely. I felt like it was I didn't feel like they were a foreign German family. I felt like they were representative of now, basically. And I would have liked Magnus a lot more if he wasn't smacking his brother around. And I know that that was supposed to be like an affectionate kind of thing because Mikkel doesn't care. He doesn't doesn't react or get pissed or anything. I would have liked Magnus a lot more without that, just like I would have liked Ulrich a lot more without knowing what I knew about him. And I think that's representative of a lot of these characters. We would like them a lot more if we didn't know these things about them. But the show is showing us these things, so we have to take that into account.
Okay, so after that, Jonas shows up at school to find everyone staring at him in a very unkind way.
Yeah.
He's greeted by his friend, Bartosz Tiedemann, who has lied to everybody and told them that Jonas was in France for 2 months playing Hide the Baguette.
Boo!
So we deduce that Jonas didn't come to school for a while after the death of his father and asked Bartosz to, either he came up with this lie or Bartosz did, but he told them, you're in France. And, Bartosz felt compelled to make up this lie to cover for him. Or was it as kind as that? Tell me how you feel, Steve.
I don't like this Bartosz fella. I mean, I do. I am drawn to him because he reminds me a lot of one of my old best friends from school. And there are some redeeming factors that Bartosz does have, where he's, kind of loyal, kind of like a us against them kind of thing. He does have some redeeming qualities here, but this whole lie about France, I think we found out later that was just a way that he could avoid a heavy topic with Marta, basically. I think he was just playing it as an avoidance game. Or maybe he knew that Marta would reach out to, want to comfort Jonas, or I don't know. That's a screwy lie, and I don't like it. I don't like liars that lie like that. It's a big lie, too. And in somebody else's defense, I'm beside myself. What about you? What are you thinking?
Well, I think more in another scene, but initially I'm like, I thought it was pretty normal that a teen would not want everyone to know that my dad killed himself and to know people were talking about him. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of lies you can make up about somebody. You don't have to say they were in France, but you might, I mean, it's not actually a bad lie because it's like, ooh, interesting, he's in France, and what, that must have been fun and great and all that,
But then he's got to come up with all these stories, though.
Yeah,
That's hard to do. Of course, if we're not in this situation, but it seems like the best lie would be, his dad passed away, or like his dad was in a car accident, or anything other than, I think the suicide is what the shameful thing is, not necessarily the death that happens. I don't know. Yeah. Bartosz sounds like a last name to me as well. I just wanted to point that out.
Well, these are German names.
True. But, that one definitely sounds like Ulrich, too, sounds like a last name to me as well. Because I know Lars Ulrich. So that's why I think of it as more of a last name kind of thing.
I think overall we could get the impression that, I don't know, Bartosz is kind of a bully, too. So, yeah. Well, we can talk more about that later. But, yeah, I don't necessarily like him in this first episode. But I do feel like he wants to protect his friend, like you mentioned, being loyal. Yeah. And when the kids are staring at Jonas, he's like, what are you all looking at? So he stands up for his friend right away. And anytime he sees Jonas kind of looking down or looking off, glazed-eyed, he kind of brings him back in or tries to make him feel better with a joke or whatever.
That's what reminded me of my friend Jay. That's how my friend Jay was, too. He wasn't afraid to, yell at people or to, state what was right or to, have his own brand of loyalty that was different from other people's brand of loyalty. So yeah, that's why I have feelings about Bartosz. Like I don't like him, and it's a strong dislike. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, but he is, he does. You can tell he does have affection towards Jonas.
Yeah.
Maybe his only friend. No, it's not true. Him and Magnus seem like they're buds, and he's got Marta too.
Yes, he does, doesn't he?
Somehow. Somehow.
So after this, we see Ulrich walking into the police station, and we find out he works for the police in Winden. And he enters the hall and finds his colleague, Charlotte Doppler, being yelled at by the parents of Eric Obendorf. They don't feel the authorities are doing enough. Eric's been missing for 13 days. And Ulrich tries to defuse the situation by assuring the parents that Eric probably just ran away. He's done that before, but they say that, well, before he was only gone for 2 days, and it's been 13 days. And, Charlotte gets spat on. So the parents are upset. The cops aren't doing enough. And Ulrich is doing the less than comforting thing police sometimes do, which is just to keep reiterating, we're doing everything we can and everything will be all right. But it's not comforting at all to these parents.
Nah, not really. And this is the particular scene that I wanted to come back around to. This is the one that is affecting me differently now. You shared a pretty serious subject earlier about the suicide incident, and so for me right now, Heather's best friend has been missing for about 2 weeks. It's been 15 days now that she's been missing, and Heather's been talking to the detectives, and she is feeling like the detectives don't really care. The detectives seem like they have their own idea of what happened, and any other speculation they just don't seem to take into consideration. They just don't seem to care. So this whole scene really struck home, because that's pretty much exactly what we're doing right now. So yeah, I can see that. And another thing less personal is Ulrich not doing the best job as a police officer here, as we're saying. Charlotte obviously is. She's going all out. We'll see later that she's really going all out into this case. But then that reminded me of Peter, who I kind of got Peter and Ulrich confused, facial-wise anyway. But yeah, Peter with his poor therapy move earlier. And, Ulrich here, just kind of the kid ran away. Big deal. So you're seeing a couple of guys in Wyndham that are just kind of half-assedly doing their jobs.
I don't know. It can be hard sometimes when you're watching something in a different language to get all the tone fully. I don't feel like Ulrich seemed all that concerned. When I look at him, truly, I was like, he doesn't really seem that concerned. But at the same time, the words he said, he makes the point that we can't dismiss the fact that there's been no criminal activity. It's a fairly typical thing because as a cop, you're trying you're trying to get the person to move from an emotional place to a slightly more logical place.
Right.
So I didn't think outwardly, at first we're like, oh, he's doing all right. He's doing a good job here. I think like you mentioned later, we can see he really on the inside doesn't care. But I'm not sure that came across here. Charlotte was also, and you mentioned your admiration for Charlotte, but she's also sort of repeating words like a cold person, like something you read in a script. So I don't know, I feel like he was a little bit more human in his approach than her. She's definitely the better detective, though, in the long run. But yeah, it's interesting that we saw that slightly differently. But I think overall, though, we both recognize that cops aren't good. Cops comforting parents, people that are upset.
Well, some aren't. Yes, that's correct. And especially this one in Chesterfield County that we're dealing with. No names involved yet. So.
So just a brief scene. We see a mysterious stranger walk out of the caves wearing a dark raincoat.
Ooh, I saw that too. It was mysterious, and we can't speculate about it yet.
Yeah. But we do get a second raincoat here. We got the yellow raincoat and we got the dark raincoat.
Heck, it's a rainy town. What can you do?
It's a rainy town. It's always raining. So Magnus stands outside the school smoking a joint and is confronted by a girl named Franziska. It turns out the girl is Franziska Doppler, the daughter of Charlotte, who works at the Wyndham police station.
Cool.
And the two of them have this strange interaction which seems both flirtatious and disdainful. Mm-hmm. And when I watched this show, Steve, I will tell you, I fell head over heels for Magnus right here in this moment. Yeah. You talked about not liking him, but he's the one that I was like, oh, if I was in Wyndham, he would be the one that I would have fallen for. I can tell you right now.
It's the hitting thing. That's the only, because like I said, other than that, I like everything about Magnus. I just don't like him hitting his little brother. Because I was a little brother. I don't like those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it either. I don't know. I feel like when I saw that, though, I feel like, okay, younger siblings always get picked on. If it's not a bop in the head, it's like, what do they call it when you grab someone around the neck and you give them like
a noogie?
A noogie. Yeah, give them like a noogie or whatever. It's like those kinds of things, especially between brothers, seem like really common. Now, maybe these days parents are moving away from allowing that sort of thing, but...
This is 2019, so you know.
But he says something interesting here to her, which I was wanting to make sure I understood the translation, and I still don't. Again, like I said, when you're doing something in a foreign language, sometimes you're not noticing the nuances with like social codes.
Okay.
But he says, shouldn't you be inside with the geeks?
Right.
Right? That's the translation we get in English.
Yes.
When I looked up when I changed to get the German words and put that in the translator, it actually just said, shouldn't you be in there? There's no geeks. But what I got out of this is he's kind of like a troublemaker, right? He's outside smoking a joint.
Yeah.
And he was surprised that she joined him. So her reputation must be squeaky clean. You know, she's maybe a straight-A student. Yeah,
I think so. It looks like she's probably a smarty. Because he's the principal's kid, but he's not a good kid, obviously. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I get the vibe that she's supposed to be a good kid. A cop's kid. Come on.
And a therapist kid.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, both of them are kids of cops. Charlotte and Ulrich work together.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So there's their relationship. Their parents have a working relationship, so they've both been like to the same boring work parties. So that's probably why their relationship is the way it is, because they have to spend like boring time together. Like, oh, we're here, okay, like desert island situations. Although for you would love it though.
Yeah, I mean, their relationship is very strange. They're kind of flirting, they're interested, but they're also sort of kind of dissing each other and insulting each other. So
I think Francesca dropped the mic on him though, because he had like an astonished look on his face when she walked away. Like, whoa.
Well, she told me she said he shouldn't be smoking weed, especially bad weed like this. And he's like, whoa, she's spicy. And he liked it.
She knows her flavors of the bud.
Oh, boy. All right, so now we get the scene. This is the scene here.
Okay.
When we're talking about Bartosz and Jonas and Marta, and that whole can of worms that gets opened. And that's what as just an aside before I read this, I will say, I was thinking today, we get introduced to so many characters in this first episode, but they do such a good job making these interactions so intriguing with very little dialogue. We don't really get to see any of these characters for very long, but we are automatically intrigued in their dynamic and what their relationship is and what the history is.
Yep.
They drop it with so little. It's all body language, blocking, and very sparse dialogue.
Yeah, I think it starts out. I mean, I know you're getting ready to go over the recap here, but like when Marta is it Marta or Martha? Can I say Martha? Is that okay?
Marta.
I got to say Marta. You're going to hold me to it?
Well, I will be saying Marta, but you can say whatever you want.
Okay.
I'm not going to hold the hammer over your head.
You are very kind about that. And during 1899, you let me say all their names wrong, and I appreciate that. I wanted to say that Jonah's face just lit up when he saw her. Like he was so stoked to see her. But then when she sat down and grabbed Bartosz's hand, you know, his face just fell. But like it was remarkable how his face lit up when he saw her. That's what I wanted to say before you went on.
Yeah, so they're at this school assembly, and one of the Nielsen teens, Marta, approaches Jonas, and the two share this meaningful look that can speak volumes. And they seem very happy to see one another. As you said, his face lights up. She's obviously happy to see him. But then she passes him by and sits next to Bartosz and kisses him. And it turns out Bartosz and Marta are now a couple. And Jonas is deflated in an instant.
Yes.
And, Bartosz makes this statement, well, maybe there's some news that you didn't know.
Oh, I hated that so much.
Right. And this is the moment that does make us dislike Bartosz.
Yes.
Because before we were I feel like we were sort of neutral. But because we're introduced to this show and what we know about Jonas is his father killed himself. So we are already sympathetic to him.
Right.
He's also the vessel with where we enter the show.
Yeah.
Like the everyday person that things are happening to. So we are designed in this moment to be sympathetic towards him.
Sure.
And now we know not only did your buddy make up a lot of stories about France, but he obviously stole your girl. I mean, this was, you can tell we don't know much of anything, but we know that Jonas likes Marta and that she probably likes him, but now she's with Bartosz and he took opportunity to, he seized his moment, right, to get with her.
That's why I was thinking the whole France story was just for Marta, like just so, he wouldn't have to like deal with a heavy subject. So he could just focus on, having a girlfriend and not having to worry about heavy subjects like the other guy, my best friend, his dad's suicide. I think that's where the France story came from a personal, like,
You're speaking from personal experience, Steve.
No, I know. Yes, I made up the France lie. I did it. I told Bartosz to say that.
I don't mean it that way,
I know,
but I
know.
feel like the situation is relatable where sometimes two guys will like the same girl, and then one of them seizes the opportunity to make something happen and sort of leaving the other person out of the loop, and it can be very hurtful, because especially if you're all friends and now I have to see you dating this person every day, see you guys together.
And if you're teenagers with that level of maturity as well, I mean, it adds another level to it. Well, I guess, do we have anything else about that scene? Because I do need to take another break.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is that during this assembly, Katerina is the principal, so we find out that
that's right.
She comes out on the stage and just asks the kids to let her know if they have any information about Eric Obendorf, and everybody be careful. Just typical adult warnings. The real purpose of this scene is for us to find out about Marta and Jonas and Bartosz, but we do find out also that Katerina is the principal of the school.
Yeah, that's big stuff. And we also find out that Magnus is sitting this one out. He doesn't go to assemblies like this. He sits outside and gets high. So we learned something about his character.
I didn't even think about that, but it could be. You can say, well, maybe Magnus is sitting somewhere else in the auditorium. He's not with his friends, but you're right. He was against the wall smoking weed.
Yeah, he ain't there. Because, he's like, aren't you supposed to be inside with the other geeks? Because he's as if to say, like, us cool guys are out here smoking weed. All the geeks are inside at the assembly with my mom.
Well, now you've helped me see the light. Now I understand that line.
Right on. Yeah, I'm sorry I forgot about that last part of that scene there with the principal. But, I forgot about it because nobody pays attention to the principals anyway. But I'm going to hit another break, Lindsay. We'll be right back in a minute. All right, we are back. Hello again, Lindsay. We are back at the police station. That's our next scene.
Right. So at the police station, Ulrich and Charlotte are discussing the Obendorf case. And Ulrich is adamant that the boy has run away. Charlotte is asking him how he knows that. And he says that it's Winden. Nothing ever happens here.
Likely.
And she reminds him that hasn't always been the case. Mm-hmm. And he lashes back that this has nothing to do with his brother.
Huh?
Yeah. Also, Charlotte tells Ulrich that his mother has called on the emergency line and that maybe he should call her back. So we find out so much in this scene.
I know, you're right.
And he asks her if she ever wonders where she took a wrong turn. And as he leaves, he says something else. But as he leaves, Charlotte looks over to glance at her family's photo. Every family has a photo. And the photo is Peter, Francisca, and another daughter. So we are kind of meeting her family. But we find out from this scene that something happened with Ulrich's brother.
Yeah.
In the past. And, Ulrich thinks his city is boring.
Maybe it is. Maybe he's right. It does seem like a pretty small town kind of situation where you can like run around in the forest with your hoodie on and nobody is even around to care. So, obviously, it's a small town vibe.
You can go get your shag and your baked goods in the morning before school. Nothing's going on. But you mentioned something to the effect of Charlotte. You said Charlotte is going all in.
Oh, yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, she has all those. Is this the scene where she shows like the tire tracks where she's been like gathering like all the different types of tire tracks and stuff, and like she's narrowing it down, like these are tire tracks of trucks, these are tire tracks of cars. I mean, they don't have much to go on, but she is going the only angles that she can, and she's going deep. So, I think they're just trying to show that she's a thorough person that's going to pay attention to details.
That's what makes her a good detective. She's very thorough. Like you said, she found out how many tire tracks were there and how many vehicles that could possibly match it. Mm-hmm. That's a good find there. And
Eric's dad drives a delivery van. Might come up later, who knows, but that's mentioned as well.
Yeah, we're wondering what Ulrich's been doing. Has Ulrich contributed anything to this case?
He's been jogging and driving around his car and getting croissants and looking for black hoodies. Yeah, I think that Charlotte's been probably been doing the heavy lifting, and he's just been kind of going through the motions. He's been quiet quitting this whole time.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, this is life in Winden.
Yep. And then we got the Hotel Wyndham. That's our next scene.
Yes. So we have another location, Forest Hotel Winden. The phone rings and it's answered by Regina Tiedemann, who answers Hotel Winden. And basically the bill collectors are calling to ask for loan payments. because nobody's been staying at the hotel ever since the boys have gone missing.
Or that's the excuse anyway.
Yeah. Regina is very upset and angry that they have no sympathy. And we find out that she's very successful. Her and her husband have been clients of this bank for many years. But that's the notes I have in that scene.
I know we found out later on, too, about how they have money because Francesca mentions that Bartos's family is rich or whatever. So I guess this hotel is profitable. I noticed there was only one key missing from the rack behind her. So I guess there is one person staying at the hotel right now. All the other keys are hanging behind her.
You must have looked pretty close because I didn't look at count the key hooks.
I had to. That's the kind of thing I do. And I've been on both sides of this conversation that she's having because I work at a utility company. So I've had to tell people that their water is about to be cut off. Their bill is way past overdue. Their bill is going to collections. And I've also been the person that has had my electricity cut off before at times. So yeah, these are difficult conversations to have. And she doesn't handle these conversations very well. She's very emotional.
And the hotel is a very large, beautiful building that we see the front of the building
right
before we go in.
Yep, but I didn't have anything else. I just noticed that one key was gone, so I assume there's one person staying there.
One brave guest.
Yeah, the reporter. That's where the reporter's staying.
Oh yeah. So back at school, Francisca is giving a report on black holes.
Interesting.
And Bartosz tells Jonas they should explore the Winding Caves and find Eric's stash of dope. He plans to find the drugs and sell them for profit. And he's also making unkind comments about Francisca.
Yeah,
so
he's a rude boy.
It's another reason we have to dislike Bartosz is that he's just making mean comments about girls.
Yeah, don't like that. I mean, it's nice that he's giggling with his friend, but the subject matter is not giggle worthy, we'll say. And yeah, her report on black holes is very interesting. We got to pay attention to these details. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't have much else for this scene.
Yeah. So Ulrich has now decided to talk to his mother.
Good boy.
Who's been making these emergency phone calls.
Yeah, to the police station.
Yeah. She's been in the forest and she tells him she's seen a strange man with a very large head. She also just found a discarded Raider candy bar wrapper. Mm-hmm. And she reminds Ulrich of how much his brother Mads loved Raider candy bars.
Okay.
And you might be wondering, what's a Raider candy bar? Well, in numerous countries, including Germany, Twix candy bars were branded as Raider until 1991. So this is basically a Twix bar that Mads enjoyed.
Yeah, the font is exactly the same. It looks like a Twix, except for the words are wrong. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out to me because the first time I saw this, I thought it looked like a Twix, but I was like, oh, it's some German candy. But it's Twix.
Some weird German candy.
Heck yeah.
Put that down for the dark watch party next time. Snacks to get, Twix bars. So she intones that what happened to Mads is happening again to Eric 33 years ago.
Yep.
And on the wall is a photo labeled Mother's Day 1986. And it has two boys in the picture. And we're guessing that these boys, at this moment, we're guessing that these boys are Ulrich and Mads, who they're discussing. And Ulrich just says, again, there's no connection. So
Ulrich.
He's continuing to be a lousy police officer.
But the whole theme of this show is everything is connected. Why is he saying there's no connection?
That's true.
That's the first thing I thought of when he said that. I was like, "You're in the wrong show, buddy. I don't know what you're saying." But yeah, is this the first time that the 33 year was brought up, or has that been brought up previously? I'm thinking we heard this before.
I don't think we had I think this is the first time 33 is brought up. We do have Charlotte saying that it hasn't been always the case that nothing happens here. Oryx says this has nothing to do with my brother. She doesn't say 33 years or draw that number. But yeah, this is the first time that number comes up. Gotcha.
Okay. Well, there's an old man in a nursing home who agrees with his mother.
That's true. So there's an older man who's in a local nursing home, and he's just saying it's going to happen again.
This is the one part of the show that, like the first time I watched it, even now, I don't know. I don't like the old man prophet saying it's going to happen again and just saying that over and over and over again. It kind of took me out just a little bit. I mean, I know what the intention is there, but just think it was a slight miss. But I'm with you. I'm with you, fella. It's going to happen again.
So now we finally get a glimpse of Eric. We've been wondering where he is.
Yeah.
And he's in a room with a sealed door. The room is decorated as if a small child is sleeping there, with blue characters on a blue wallpaper, cartoony bed linens, a panda in a chair, toys, milk and cookies, and bunk beds.
Looks a little too young for Eric, right?
This really reminded me. Remember when in 1899 you were saying that the Elliot's weird ass room?
This is exactly what I thought about too.
So much, yeah. So Eric is lying on his bed, sort of hugging himself and holding his ears. And there's a television that is playing a music video of Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Around, playing loudly. In the center of the room, we see a strange-looking chair, and it looks sort of like an electric chair.
It looks exactly like an electric chair to me.
Not sort of, exactly.
It's exactly what I thought it was when I first saw it.
Yeah, so what did you think of this scene, Steve?
I did not like it. It made me think about 1899, Elliot's little room. I could tell by him putting his hands on his ears that song was just being played over and over and over again in order to drive him crazy. I guess it's been 13 days now, and he's been in this room with like no stimuli except for this brightly colored stimuli. So I'm fearing the worst for our boy here, Eric. I don't like where he's at. I felt like a sinking feeling in my stomach, like, oh, this is one of those kind of unfortunate scenes. That's all I can tell you, is I just did not like it.
It's one of those things where for me, I'm like, well, no, I didn't. I mean, I was glad to get a look at Eric. I was like, okay, he's not dead.
Yes. He looks healthy.
And if I really liked the wallpaper, I was like, this is bright and colorful. It's the kind of thing I would like. But all together, having the wallpaper and the carpet be bright blue, and then the door, though, is like a dungeon door that's painted blue. And just the way they film it with like the weird milk and cookies and the panda, and then you see it's a teenage boy. It's just it's creepy. It's just creepy and gives you the creeps.
It is, and yeah, it ties in with all these Vermist posters we've been seeing around everywhere.
So back at school, Jonas and Bartosz keep talking about walking to the caves, and Martha and Magnus overhear and want to get involved right away.
Sure.
And the group passes Franziska, and she and Magnus have another one of their weird interactions where she's like, Magnus, Franziska? And everybody's like, what's going on?
I like that a lot.
So I liked it too. It was like, I see you, you see me. Hello. But what I think is interesting here is Bartosz has been up to this point trying to convince Jonas to, like, they need to do this. And Jonas has been sort of like, I don't know. But then Marta joins the group, and Bartosz keeps doing the thing where he puts his arm around Marta, and then Jonas is like, all right, let's do it. So they're going to meet at the caves. They're going to go to the caves and try to find the dope so they can sell it.
Get rich or die trying. I got to point out here, because a lot of people watched Stranger Things, and then, like, while they were waiting between seasons, they happened upon Dark, and they checked out Dark. It's no coincidence that Bartosz here says easy peasy, which is very similar to what our man said in Stranger Things. That was like his big catchphrase. And
Sean Astin.
Sean Astin, there you go. And like everything was easy peasy. And even like when he like passed away, that was like, he was like easy peasy. So like Bartosz saying it here brought me right back to Stranger Things mentality. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, well, whether it translates fully into German, who knows? But I appreciate you finding that connection, Steve.
Sure.
So Hannah arrives at the wind and power plant and receives a call from Ulrich, who is, bugging her to come to the meeting again tonight. And he kind of throws out this idea of them going on an out-of-town business trip together. And Hannah looks pretty happy about this suggestion. But meanwhile, the Nielsen home, Katarina picks up Ulrich's sweatshirt that's just still at the table and finds a mysterious hair and notices a strange smell. And she looks at her family photo. So she does not take the hair to the forensics lab, but she notices a hair on the sweatshirt.
She doesn't need one. She knows. She's got her suspicions. And if that hoodie smells like Hannah, even after his jog, then she has a pretty strong scent. And remember, don't want to get ahead of myself, but she does get a good scent of Hannah later on too, and you can kind of. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but she kind of does like a little inhale there as well.
I did not.
But my only note for this was Ulrich sucks. Again, I just wrote that down. First I was wondering why she was going to the power plant. Like when I first saw this scene, it by this point it's clear what everybody's occupation was, and I was wondering what Hannah's occupation was. And I see her at the power plant, and the first thought is she's a power plant employee. That's cool. But you're going to tell us in this next scene that's not quite the case.
So she's a massage therapist who has, we only see her working with one client the whole show, which is Alexander Tiedemann, father of Bartosz and husband of Regina. So he's the wealthy person you talked about before. And Alexander has this scar on his back that Hannah points out, and Alexander reveals that 33 years ago he arrived in town. So the 33s continue.
33 years ago, some stuff happened, and this dude walked into town, and he's like, I'm going to put my power plant right here. Like,
that's exactly what happened, even though it was built in 1960. But, okay.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting. They made Hannah on the show like a massage therapist, which is like everybody else has principal, police officer, therapist, which are like more, I guess, cerebral, and where a massage therapist is more like of the body instead of like of the brain. So I don't know if that was significant of anything or not, but I just thought that was an interesting choice for her job, and that she has like a job what's like intimate. It's like an intimate kind of job where like she's not being intimate with a man, but I mean he is undressed and she is like handling him and like helping him.
It's almost like a type of healthcare.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm looking for. But it's a healthcare of the body, as opposed to the mind. Mm-hmm. But it gives her access and gives us access to see this scar on his back, which, is an important thing to do.
Right.
As
It's
a
pretty interesting looking scar too.
Yeah.
But we come back to Inez, who's still gazing at the letter.
She loves that letter.
She listens to a voicemail from Hannah, who's angry that the power is out. And she hasn't come to see Jonas in a few months. And, so this was interesting, too, where you're like, well, why are you calling Inez about your house?
Yeah.
The power being out. Can't you pay your own power bill? But, yeah, there's a lot we don't know here. But we already saw that Hannah, ripped her out of the family photo.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was thinking that, too. Like, why is it Inez's responsibility to have the power there? And it's... But not only is that an issue, like the milk has also gone bad. We can't forget that. So she hasn't gone shopping in a while either. I think these things are kind of stacking up to show us, her husband did commit suicide, but I think that she's just not functioning well, just straight up. And maybe there was some kind of...
She's going to work.
Well, she is.
Yeah.
I mean, no doubt. She still has to survive, I guess. But maybe there was some kind of weird arrangement in the past. I mean, you never know what kind of maybe that's Inez's house and that she's always been in charge of the bills. And she told them, maybe she made a promise to Michael at one point. Like, oh, yeah, I got your bills for you. Don't worry. And then when he passed away, Hannah was like, hey, she's got our bills for us. Well, guess what? She doesn't.
Yeah. Well, even when Jonas came down to breakfast at the beginning, he sat down at the table when he didn't have breakfast, and there was like an open bottle of wine there.
Oh, so, didn't notice that.
There's no breakfast, but we were enjoying our wine. Yeah. So Hannah goes to school for this meeting, which turns out to be a parent meeting about Eric Obendorf.
Right.
And she's met by Katerina. And they're friends. And I guess this is what you were saying, Katerina takes a sniff.
Yes, they hug, and then there's a visible sniff that she does, like while they're hugging. So I didn't know if she caught that smell or not, or if it was just coincidence, but it was there.
Mm-hmm. And Katerina is very surprised to see her. So you get the feeling that Hannah has not been out in public. Maybe she hasn't seen her since the suicide, and...
Just like Jonas, I guess. Like, they've just been in hiding for a while.
Yeah.
Except for Ulrich. He's been around.
Mm-hmm. Ulrich's been around somehow. Those two are in touch.
Yep.
So Jonas leaves on his bike to meet his friends at the caves. And he and Marta are the first two people to show up.
Heck yeah.
She tries to talk to him about what happened last summer, but he kind of cuts her off and is like, is everything okay? And she feels like there's a moment of deja vu. And Jonas replies that it must be a glitch in the matrix, is how, he doesn't say matrix, he says it in German.
Yeah.
But this is an opportunity the two of them could have maybe talked about what happened, but... They don't, mostly because of Jonas. I guess he's decided to play the avoidant game. We're not going to have this conversation right now.
I do like how she came back at him, though, where he was like, no, you don't have to talk about this. And she was like, no, I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
I appreciate that she's like more of an open person than obviously Jonas is. I mean, he's got his things going on. We're sympathetic to him, but... Yeah, he wants to just kind of brush it aside for now, and yeah.
Yeah, and she mentions what happened between us back then.
A smooch, perhaps?
And yeah, so we're like, oh, there's a history. We already knew that, but she tries to bring it up, and it's interesting. I wonder, you can wonder, like, why did he not want to talk about it? I guess he thought... The others will be here very soon, and he also has no idea if Martha like still likes him or if she's happy with Bartosz, and he's not up for getting Jonas isn't getting up for getting rejected right now when he's already feeling very fragile.
Yeah, I hear that.
So the rest of the group shows up, and Mikkel had to come along too because the babysitter called in sick. And Mikkel and Jonas are buddies, and they give each other an ultimate fist bump, which I love. You're just like, oh, it's adorable. And then Magnus and Bartosz continued to take turns whopping Mikkel on the head some more. So even
Magnus doesn't stand for that, though. He's like, hands off my brother.
Yeah, but then he does it himself. He says, I'm the only one that can do that. Yeah, so.
then to demonstrate it, he does it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the old man keeps showing up saying it's going to happen again. We don't have to keep reiterating, but he's doing that over and over again throughout the rest of this episode.
Thank you, sir.
At the parent meeting, we kind of see Katerina is trying to do something to keep the rest of the kids safe, and Regina is very upset by anything Katerina proposes.
Anything.
So this is another instance of instant history we can see with very little explanation that whatever Katerina thinks is a good idea, Regina thinks it's a really bad idea. And so Hannah comes in too, but she's just kind of there waiting for Ulrich to show up so they can have another makeout session.
She is not paying attention. Nope. I was wondering about the Regina and I'm sorry, what's the principal's name? Katerina?
Katerina, yes.
Yeah, like their vibe was very off. Like we'll probably find more about that later. But at this instant, I was thinking it might be like more like a rich person / school principal kind of power dynamic that they were trying to assert. Mm-hmm. Not they, Regina was trying to assert. That's what I came up with at the moment, watching this just blindly.
Well, we have to remember, too, that Regina's business is suffering because nobody wants to come stay at the hotel.
Sure.
So she's interested in getting Winden back in business again. And the more that Katerina tries to emphasize that there's really bad things happening, that could get more and more bad publicity. And she's trying to sort of avert that from happening. So I feel like I do think they hate each other. There's more going on beneath the surface. But the on the surface dynamic is that Katerina is saying she wants to protect the kids, and Regina is thinking, well, I want to foil her plans, but also I don't want any more bad publicity.
Right.
And it feels like, you could just be trying to incite bad things happening by continuing to say that there's that there's now a serial killer or whatever. Let's not start rumors.
Yeah, exactly. In a room full of people, no less. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the way to the caves, Mikkel is really concerned about Eric, as you would as a young kid, trying to understand this. And you see how each of the people is dealing with this a certain way. Bartosz is making jokes.
Sure.
Mikkel is like, it would be terrible if you weren't found, even if you were dead. I would want to be found. And he's kind of putting himself in Eric's shoes, which I thought was really sweet. And then Marta just keeps turning around to make eyes at Jonas. and Jonas is, I don't know what he was trying to do exactly, but he's like, my dad says that good and bad is a matter of perspective. And, is it uncomfortable for you guys that I'm making jokes about my dead father? And
I loved that. They did not like that, but I liked it. I thought it was like a little bit of him coming out of his shell some and relating with his friends. And then his friends were just kind of like, what do we say? Because they kind of clammed up.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, that makes you wonder, though, if he's bringing that up, do Marta and Magnus know about his father dying? Like, what was the deal with France then? Like, right? Because if Marta really believes he went to France, then is this actually Jonas's way of bringing up that, oh, this is what really happened?
Oh, and that's why they gave him that look. Oh.
Like, what's he talking about?
Right.
You know?
Interesting. Okay.
But they don't really get to ask him any questions or dive deeper in that because they come to the caves and Bartosz remarks that the dope is in that yellow armchair, but it's missing. And Franziska steps out and she has shown up as well and offers to sell this dope to Bartosz so he can sell it.
Smart move.
Yeah. And he basically pushes her and steals the dope.
Yeah, jerk off. Man, that was the jerkiest move.
Yeah. And you see, they make a point of showing Magnus's face when he pushes Franziska.
Yes.
Because of their dynamic. Now, at the same time as this is happening, I want to let everybody know that Inez has started reading that letter.
Right.
So this last bit of scenes.
It's 10:13.
Okay. I was like, wait, it's 10:02.
No,
Steve.
It's 10:13 on November whatever.
Yes,
so yeah, it is time to open the letter now. That's right.
And what we need to make sure people remember is that in this part of the episode, there are multiple things happening at the same time.
Right.
We've got the parent meeting. We've got Ulrich and Hannah making out at the side of the building. We have the kids, and we have Inez reading the letter. And these things cut back and forth to each other. So it really amplifies the tension of everything. Yeah. Oh,
I was just going to say, real quick, the most uninteresting thing that's happening is the fact that Ulrich and Hannah are making out there. But I think it's interesting that they're making out at the exact same spot that Magnus was just smoking his joint with Francesca earlier. That's the exact same spot. Like his son was just there smoking a joint, and now he's there making out with his friend's mom. So that's the spot to do weird stuff.
Yeah, good call.
But more important stuff is happening though. Like what?
Yeah. And what I want to know here is, why does Bartosz hate Franziska so much?
Yeah.
That's an overall question I have.
That came out of nowhere because they saw her earlier and they didn't really give her any ill will when they saw her in the hallway. It's just like...
Well, he was the whole time. You remember he was making fun of her in the...
that's right. In the classroom.
He was making fun of her in the class.
Yeah.
And they obviously, I feel like when Magnus and Franziska interacted, they were giving Magnus a hard time about it.
Okay.
So all of them sort of don't seem to like her, but Bartosz, I felt, Martha says that she does say, oh, what's this, or why is she here? But, Bartosz is overly mean to her.
Yes.
And it's just, you wonder about that. Is there bad blood between them for some reason?
Absolutely seems like it. Now that you mention it, yeah, he was picking on her in class. Well, not picking on her, but talking crap about her.
So the lights all go out, including all of their flashlights, phones, and everything. And a loud noise comes from the caves. Everybody runs, and Jonas and Mikkel are left behind. Jonas grabs Mikkel's hand, and the two run together.
That was cute. I love that. I saw that Jonas grabbed Mikkel's hand. I loved it.
That was sort of uncool that everybody else just left.
Yes.
Wouldn't you grab your, Magnus didn't stop and make sure Mikkel was okay.
That's why I thought it was adorable that Jonas did it. Out of everybody, you would think it would be Martus or Magnus, but nope, it was Jonas.
Well, he's the one that's been the nicest to Mikkel this whole time, out of everybody. So Jonas trips and loses hold of Mikkel, and when he stands up, Mikkel is gone. And then a voice calls out from the desert.
Jonas.
Jonas. And Jonas has told us he's seeing his father.
In his dreams, right.
In his dreams. So Jonas turns around and he sees an image of Michael Kahnwald. Mm-hmm. And I put here covered in blood, but I don't know if it's blood.
I was wondering that too.
It was black. It was more like oil.
Yeah. Because, I mean, he hung himself, so he wouldn't be bloody. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was really interesting, too. That gave me pause. I mean, I recognized who it was immediately, but I was curious about the blood. Mm-hmm. But you don't have any answers?
He's covered in some black substance.
Maybe it's paint.
They're near this... It could be paint. They're near the nuclear power plant. So whatever comes out...
Power goop.
What liquid? Yeah. This is another image that can remind us so much of 1899 and seeing old, I can't remember the guy's name. Oleg, Oleg coming out of the smokestack on the ship. So Helga has showed up at the meeting. The old man, his name is Helga, and he is Peter's father.
Okay.
Or they're related somehow. And he tells Charlotte it's too late. And back at the school, the cell phones of Hannah, Ulrich, Katerina, Charlotte, and Regina all light up at the same time.
At this scene, I thought everybody's cell phones. When I first saw this, the first 2 times I saw this, I thought everybody's phones were going off. And then it was the third time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's just the parents of our characters' phones. So that makes a little more sense to me now. Because at first I was wondering, why is the whole town getting all blown up? But it's just the parents.
Well, it could have been because as I read in my description, I just said all the lights go out, including the flashlights and the cell phones. They didn't have any light at all. So if it was one of those electrical impulse things that makes like a whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
A shutdown. But it wasn't like the lights went out inside the parent meeting. But anyway.
The only people that were interrupted were the parents, because I looked at the crowd and nobody else was looking at their phones except for Hannah and Katerina. Or not Hannah. You know who I'm saying. Katerina and Regina.
Right. And, Jonas has joined his friends at this point, and they all realize that Mikkel is nowhere to be found.
Right. Not good news. And everybody's mad at everybody else. But, yeah, we got to find this kid. Because he's cool. We like his hoodie.
Yeah, he's wearing like the Karate Kid hoodie, like the skeleton costume. Johnny. So the parents arrive. Hannah and Ulrich had to stop their make-out session.
Aw. I wonder if Jonas smelled Ulrich on Hannah when she hugged him.
The parents arrive and embrace their children. It's raining, of course. And Ulrich runs to the caves to see if he can find Mikkel. And Ines is finishing the letter, and she folds it up and puts it back in the box. And she's crying. So it's all very moving. And there's the first of many montage sequences. Every episode has one of these long songs with a montage of images. So our song this time is Nightfall by Mimi Page, which is an instrumental. There's no lyrics to this song, but it's a pretty heartbreaking song.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, now Ulrich is worried about missing kids. When it's his own kid, he's going to be really worried about it. So this puts him in the ballpark now.
Yeah.
I think he's not going to be running on empty anymore. I think he's going to actually have a purpose from now on.
Okay, why don't you finish this? Because my voice is beginning to fry.
Yeah, sure. As the day breaks, the site of the cave is being investigated. Charlotte receives a phone call from Peter, who tries to tell her something. Charlotte cuts him off. Peter lets himself be cut off. Yeah, sure, whatever. And then he starts doing the serenity prayer out loud. The one that's, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, etc., etc. So he's praying now. I wanted to mention that cave being investigated. Of course, there's cops there, but there's also dudes in white hazmat suits with full hazmat gear on. like head to toe, like masks and everything, running their little metal detectors and stuff around there. So I thought that was a pretty interesting sight to see besides just the police officers.
It is interesting. Is that a typical thing people do? Maybe just near nuclear power plants.
I think near nuclear power plants is where that happens. I've never seen that anywhere else. I'm going to go on here and say that a body has been found in the forest. Ulrich runs to the site. Charlotte is there and hugs him to comfort him. She allows him to check out the scene. The body, is buried under the leaves. Ulrich does some digging to tenderly pull the leaves back. He's a little confused now when he sees the shoes. I guess he realizes those aren't his kid's shoes. Mm-hmm. As he looks at the boy, he backs up, tells Charlotte, "That's not Mikkel." He says it twice. "That's not Mikkel." We see like there's a Walkman next to him. The Walkman's still spinning with a tune. And do we see the boy's face at this time where like he has that burn up eyes? We see that right now, right?
Mm-hmm. His eyes are covered with something. I mean, we don't know what that is at this point, and maybe not even later, but it's covered with something black. Yes.
Looks all kooky. But it's definitely not Mikkel, is what he says. So I guess it's kind of a half relief, right? That, like he's glad it's not his son, but at the same time, it's not a relief because it's not his son. His son is still missing.
Right. Then, yeah, it's just, I thought it was interesting that he notices those sneakers first. And I don't know my sneakers, but I think they're like Air Jordans of some kind.
They
but
are.
He might have, it could be that Ulrich goes, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, what is he thinking there? Is he thinking, oh, these shoes are old? Or is he thinking these shoes look familiar?
All right. But not Mikkel's shoes. We know that for sure.
It's not Mikkel, though. He knows that for sure.
So, like, our last scene is we go back to that room where our boy Eric is, the torture room. He's being held prisoner. There's somebody in the room with him. An unseen man straps Eric into that scary chair, which looks like an electric chair to me, I guess. The TV is playing. We got another music video. It's Nina from 1984. I can't pronounce the name of the song, but it's a German song. And yeah, what's happening here to Eric does not look fun. That's when our scene goes out, when that thing clicks across his eyes. We fade to black. So we're not sure what's happening to Eric here.
It doesn't look good for Eric.
It does not. I hope his eyes don't, I don't know. That's not good stuff. And the music changed. He's got a different song he's jamming to now.
Yeah, this song, I don't know German either, but I'm going to say Ergwendi, Ergwendwo, Ergwendwan. It's,
sure, that sounds good.
The video is pretty outrageous. There's people on roller skates, neon colored clothes, as you do in the 80s. But Eric, we know that Eric is, that video is from 1984. Eric is, it's 2020. So why are they playing this 1984 music video? You're just like, what? This is crazy. And before the other one was
Dead or Alive.
It was Right Round or whatever.
Yeah, Dead or Alive, You Spin Me Round.
Spin Me Round, yes. That's another 80s song. So I was like, man, this serial killer really likes 1980s music.
Well, Germany was the place for like the 80s. I mean, we're about the same age. I remember like in the early 80s, like loving Nina and like 99 Luftballons. I love the German version of it. And I remember like there was Der Kommissar was like a big hit at the time, which was a completely German song. Rock Me Amadeus had all these German parts to it. I don't know, Germany in the 80s, they hit it right.
I'm not as cool as you. I mean, I don't know that I know all those songs, that they were German. You know, I don't know that part. I'm like, okay, they played these at the roller rink, some of these songs at the roller rink. Right. But I wasn't cognizant of the fact that they were in, like, the 99 Luftballons. Like, I wasn't... You used to talk about lyrics. I wasn't paying attention to the lyrics. I was just like, can I roller skate to it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but we're goofing on this like really serious ending here because this is I don't know.
You have to have some levity here, Steve. This is a very dire show.
But I mean, this is a great first episode of any show. I mean, it says so much without saying a whole lot, and you really you're kind of getting a sense of who these people are and that they're related in some way, but you don't quite know. Like, I still wasn't quite sure of people's relationships with each other at this point, like, watching the show. I mean, I've seen it all now, but, like, going back to, like, seeing only the first episode, I knew that I loved it, and I knew that there was a lot more I needed to see. Very Bo and Jonte. I mean, this is... it's prime stuff. That's why we're doing it. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't love it.
Yeah, and for this to be their first... I mean, I know they had done a couple movies, but for this to be, like, their first major project, you know, you have to be in awe of that.
Yeah.
How good this show is. It really is. And we have, like you said, we just have so many questions. We're brought into this. I'm like... the interactions between these people, you have this small town and you have these 4 families, and you're brought in. You're like, what did that letter say?
Yeah.
How did Inez get the letter? Is she going to show the letter to Jonas?
Yeah.
Where's the black hoodie? I mean, that could be important. So, you know, what does Peter want to tell Charlotte?
33. What's this 33-year thing?
Yeah. And what does Marta want to say to Jonas? And what happened between Marta and Jonas? It's just everything. Alexander, 33 years ago. Mads, 33 years ago.
Right.
And, yeah.
Well, I guess one thing I can say, like, in closing here, because we are, like, on the ramp down here. We're closing up. To come back where everything is connected, I just released a song just yesterday. I did a cover version of the song Goodbye by Apparat, and someone pointed out to me that it was my 33rd single that I have released as an artist. So it's really weird that, like, the number 33 came up in my life in a really unexpected way. I did not know that was my 33rd single, but it was, and it was from the show Dark. So that tells you everything is definitely connected. Yeah.
Well, I know we need to close up, but I do wonder at this point, maybe you had mentioned wanting to say, like, who's the character you love, who's the character you hate or, like, despise the most so far. So what, let's name our favorite and least favorite at this point after this one episode.
Yeah, because I think it's going to change drastically as we go through the series. I mean, it's a big toss-up between Bartos and Ulrich, but I'm going to have to go with Ulrich as, like, my guy that is not my least favorite, but he's the guy that I'm loving to hate right now. Like, he's at the bottom of the pile because, how dare he take advantage of a woman who, has been through this trauma and has her son to take care of, and he's going to step in there and, sleep with her and not even give her, like, the comfort that she really needs. He's just giving her sex, and he's leaving his family at home and lying to them. You're terrible, Ulrich. You're terrible. Do you agree, or do you have a different person that you hate the most?
Mine's Bartosz.
Okay.
I think they do that on purpose here. They bring him in. He's like portrayed, I think the family in general is portrayed as the bad guys. Because you have him being mean to Franziska and stealing Jonas's girlfriend, and then you've got Regina, who's just mad at Katerina. So, and then Alexander is the wealthy, he's the man of their house, and he's like a rich executive. So just in general, I feel like the Tiedemann family are portrayed very much of being the people on the outside, kind of. Yeah.
Sure. You just made me realize something, though. I know we're supposed to be wrapping up, but this Tiedemann family, if they're so rich, why is she getting calls from bill collectors for her hotel? If they're so rich, she should not be getting those bill collector calls. Just wanted to throw that out there. And it seems like he's pretty wealthy.
Have, he's wealthy, but there's also the power plant is closing, remember?
That's true. In about a year.
Yeah. Squeaky
clean record so far, though.
Not even a year. It's November, and it's going off the grid in 2020. So a couple months.
All right. Ride it while you can, buddy.
Okay, favorite character?
I love Mikkel.
Mikkel.
Not just because he's the youngest character on the show, and I know everybody's drawn to the youngest, cutest or whatever, but I just like his whole attitude, his whole spirit. He's got a lot of spirit, and he's really into his magic. He has his thing that he's really into, and he's really committed to it. He wants to dress like a magician. So you got to, I don't know, I like that passion. He's my guy.
Yeah. Well, I already told you I kind of, have the hots for Magnus, but I also think Charlotte is, I really like her because, like you mentioned, she's thorough and doing a good job, and she's like typical hardworking woman, and Ulrich is taking all the credit for all of her work, but so she's, not that you're like that, Steve.
Wait a second. That sure came around quick.
Well, no, I said not that you're like that.
Oh, okay.
I'm being serious.
I was like, wait a second. My defenses went up real quick.
Because I just said the typical, the man's getting all the credit for the woman's work. And I was like, but this does not go for you and I.
Yeah, you did all these nice recaps. And then I'm going to swoop in and be like, this is my podcast. Well, speaking of podcasts, let's wrap up here. Did you have anything in particular you wanted to showcase this week, or any plugs?
Well, I hope people will go to one of my stories and read these awesome recaps, of course. What am I have coming up? The next kind of big thing I have coming up is I am going to be doing a podcast about the Evil Dead movies, because the new Evil Dead movie is coming out, and I just watched the movies for the first time. So I and another podcaster are going to be talking about the franchise, like someone who's knows the franchise really well, and me, who's a newbie. So I'm the sweet child.
Yay!
I'm the sweet child. So look for that coming up on my channel. That's the next big thing. Yeah.
And let me tell people, when you go to one of my stories and look at these dark recaps, Lindsey has pretty much reviewed every movie that's come out. She has tons of reviews on there. So it's a good resource for me. If I want to check out a movie, I check out what Lindsey said about it. We don't always agree 100%, but I really appreciate she has those. And you just did all those South by Southwest movies and reviews. So, don't cut yourself short. Lindsey's got a lot of stuff she's been up to, and she's got a lot of reviews. But what we're interested in right now is dark. So go check out that dark recap. And me, I'm just doing music under Introvoid. I'm on all the streaming services, and that's my Instagram handle for me personally is intro.void. But this show has an Instagram too, Sweet Child of Time Pod. And our Gmail address is very long, sweetchildoftimepod@gmail.com. That's in the show notes, so if you want to click it and write us a note, we'd appreciate it. And Lindsey, this is about the time that I'm going to start telling you to find some water and shade, but did you have anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, write us some email. That's all I want. Write us a message about the show and what you like about it.
Please. We haven't gotten emails since the 1899 days. We were getting a lot of emails then, and when we started doing Wheel of Time again, the emails stopped completely. So we want them back, and Lindsey will talk to you, and I'll talk to you as well.
Yeah, and if you write us a good email, we'll read it on the air. It's wide open right now, so
Absolutely.
You can be the one. We'll make you famous.
And if you were listening last week, you know that me and James gave away the first 8 books of the Wheel of Time series completely free, just because somebody wrote in. So when you write in, things might happen. You never know. But from us at Sweet Child of Time, we're signing off. So for me, Lindsey, I'm going to say to you, I hope you always find water and shade.
I hope you always find water and shade and a really nice yellow raincoat.
Oh, yes. Everything is connected. Bye, Lindsey.
Bye.